Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, strap in, everyone. We were going deep on Elon Musk and specifically his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, episode number 2223.
Yeah, this one is a long one.
Oh, it is a long one. But, so many topics.
So much to unpack.
I mean, just to give you a little preview, we're going to be talking about sustainable energy and AI, the future of democracy.
He's not hold back.
No. And he had some pretty out there opinions.
Yeah, some eyebrow-raising stuff.
We're going to break all that down, and we're going to give you some context on why this conversation is still making waves.
For sure.
So let's jump right in. One of the first things that caught my attention was his stance on food and climate change. He basically says that reducing meat consumption won't impact climate change at all.
Yeah, he uses the word irrelevant, which is a pretty strong statement.
Very strong.
And, kind of flies in the face of a lot of research out there.
Right.
Like, for example, the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, they estimate that livestock contribute to about 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, so a pretty significant chunk.
Yeah, you can't just dismiss it as irrelevant.
So how do we make sense of that? Why would he say something like that?
Well, I think it's important to understand the context of his argument. He's not saying that meat consumption has no environmental impact.
Right.
His point is that focusing on individual dietary choices can distract from the larger systemic issues.
Okay, I see. So it's less about meat is bad and more about looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. Things like industrial farming practices, our reliance on fossil fuels, those are the real drivers of climate change, according to him.
So it's more nuanced than some people might initially think.
Definitely. And it brings up this question of individual action versus systemic change.
Right, which is a theme that comes up a lot in this conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Or I guess we should say X now.
Right, X.
He frames this whole thing as a battle for free speech. He claims that the old Twitter was silencing certain voices and controlling the narrative.
Yeah, he specifically calls out the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Right.
He sees that as a prime example of censorship.
Now, I'm not sure if censorship is the right word.
Right. It's debatable.
Social media platforms have terms of service, and they make decisions about content moderation based on those terms.
Right. They have to draw the line somewhere.
But Musk's point is that these platforms have become so powerful, they basically act as gatekeepers of information.
That's his concern.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that a handful of companies have so much control over what we see and hear.
And that leads us to another target of Musk's criticism, what he calls the woke left.
Yeah, he and Rogan really go in on that.
They express a lot of concern about what they see as an overreach of progressive ideology, particularly when it comes to free speech and identity politics.
They argue that this woke culture, as they describe it, is stifling dissent,
Okay.
creating an environment where people are afraid to express opinions that don't align with a specific viewpoint.
And that circles back to Musk's whole reason for buying Twitter, right?
Exactly. He sees it as a way to push back against that.
To create a platform where anyone can say anything, which, obviously has its own set of problems.
For sure. We'll get into that a bit later.
Yeah, we definitely will. But first, I want to touch on how this all ties into Musk's views on the 2024 election.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Because he doesn't shy away from expressing his support for Trump.
Nope.
And he even goes so far as to say that the Democrats are working to create a one-party state.
It's a pretty bold claim.
It is.
And he brings up concerns about voter fraud, specifically pointing to illegal immigration as a potential way for Democrats to manipulate the vote.
Now, I got to say, those are some pretty serious accusations.
Definitely.
And, there's a lot of debate about the validity of those claims.
Right. There's evidence to suggest that voter fraud is extremely rare in the U.S.
So it seems like Musk is tapping into this distrust of established institutions, whether it's the government, the media, or even scientific consensus.
Yeah, it's a theme that runs throughout the conversation.
And that distrust is especially apparent in his views on COVID-19.
Oh, for sure.
He and Rogan express a lot of skepticism about various aspects of the pandemic response.
Like vaccine mandates, alternative treatments, the influence of big pharma.
It's like they're questioning everything.
They are.
They even bring up the Vioxx scandal, where a pharmaceutical company marketed a drug knowing its harmful side effects.
Right.
They use that as an example of a lack of transparency within the industry.
They're basically saying, don't just blindly trust what you're told.
Do your own research.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, that can be a dangerous thing too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with all the misinformation out there these days.
It's a tough balance. You want to be informed, but you also need to be discerning about your sources.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between skepticism and informed decision-making.
Exactly. Which, let's be honest, can feel pretty overwhelming at times.
It can. But hey, that's why we're here, to help you make sense of it all.
That's our mission.
And speaking of challenging conventional thinking, let's move on to a topic that's gaining more and more mainstream attention: psychedelic therapies.
All right, now we're getting into some interesting territory.
Yeah, Musk and Rogan are both big advocates for the legalization and research of substances like MDMA and psilocybin.
Especially for treating PTSD and addiction.
They argue that these substances have incredible therapeutic potential.
And they criticize the current legal framework that prohibits their use.
It's like, on the one hand, we have opioids, which are causing so much harm, yet they're readily available.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have these potentially beneficial substances that are completely outlawed.
They see that as a huge hypocrisy.
Now, I know psychedelic therapies are still in their early stages of research,
For sure.
and more studies are needed to fully understand their efficacy and safety.
Definitely. But there is growing evidence to suggest that they could offer new and effective ways to treat mental health conditions.
Especially in cases where traditional therapies have failed.
Absolutely. It's a promising area of research, but it's still very much in its infancy.
Right. It's a controversial topic, but one that I think deserves an open-minded discussion.
I agree.
Okay, and just when you thought the conversation couldn't get any weirder, they bring up the mega squirrel incident.
Laughter.
This one's a head-scratcher at first.
It is.
They discuss a case where the government euthanized a pet squirrel,
Yeah.
and they use it as an example of government overreach.
And excessive regulation.
They're basically saying that the government has too much power and is interfering in people's lives in ways that it shouldn't.
And while that particular case might seem bizarre, it speaks to a larger concern about the balance of power between individuals and the government.
It makes you think, if they can do that to a squirrel, what else can they do?
Right. It's a slippery slope argument.
Okay, so even in that seemingly random anecdote, we see those recurring themes of individual liberties and questioning authority.
Exactly. And it actually segues perfectly into our next section, where Musk talks about his vision for Tesla.
Oh, and it's not just about electric cars anymore.
Nope, he's got bigger plans.
He's talking about pushing the boundaries of technology in areas like autonomy, robotics, and sustainable energy.
He paints a picture of a future that's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
Like when he says that he predicts a future with more humanoid robots than humans.
Yeah, that one's a doozy.
Whoa, hold on. More robots than people?
That's what he's saying.
That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm all for robots doing the dishes and stuff, but this is next level.
It is. And it raises all sorts of questions about the ethical implications of AI and the potential impact on society.
Like, what happens to jobs?
Exactly. And what are the risks of creating machines that are smarter than us?
It's like we're stepping into uncharted territory. And it's both exciting and a little unnerving at the same time.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you have the potential for incredible advancements.
Right, think about the possibilities in medicine, in space exploration, in solving some of the world's biggest challenges.
But on the other hand, you have these potential risks that we can't even fully comprehend yet.
And Musk is urging us to be mindful of those risks, to think about the ethical implications of this technology before it gets too far ahead of us.
It's almost like he's saying, wake up, people. The future is happening whether we're ready or not.
That's a great way to put it.
And speaking of waking up, I think it's time for us to take a little break.
Sounds good.
When we come back, we'll dive into Musk's vision for X, his new AI chatbot, and what all of this means for the average person trying to navigate this rapidly changing world.
Stay tuned. So before the break, we were talking about Musk and his prediction of a future with More humanoid robots than humans.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
It's a big one, right?
It is. It is.
I mean, think about the implications.
Yeah, where do we even begin?
Well, on the one hand, you have the potential for increased efficiency and productivity. Imagine robots taking on all those dangerous or repetitive tasks, the ones that humans don't really want to do.
Yeah, like cleaning the gutters.
Exactly. And that would free up humans for more creative and fulfilling endeavors.
Okay, that part does sound pretty appealing.
Right. But then on the other hand, you have to consider the potential downsides.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Things like job displacement, what happens when robots start taking over jobs that humans currently do.
Right.
And then there's the issue of economic inequality.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
If robots are doing all the work, who benefits from that? Who owns the robots? Who controls the wealth?
And then there's the whole ethical side of things, right?
Exactly.
Like, what does it mean to create machines that are so intelligent, so human-like?
It's a question that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries, but now it's becoming a reality.
It feels like we're on the verge of something really big, something that could fundamentally change what it means to be human.
I think you're right about that.
It's both exciting and a little bit scary, to be honest.
I get that. I totally get that.
Like, I'm not sure I'm ready for a world where robots are walking around, doing their thing.
It's a big adjustment, for sure.
It makes me think of all those sci-fi movies about robots taking over the world.
Laughter. Yeah, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
But seriously, though, it does make you wonder, where do we draw the line? How much autonomy do we give these machines?
Those are big questions, and there's no easy answers.
Right.
But I think Musk is right to bring them up.
Yeah, we need to start thinking about these things now, before it's too late.
Exactly. We need to have those conversations about responsible AI development, about the ethical boundaries of technology.
Speaking of AI, Musk also talked about this new chatbot he's working on, Grock, right?
Yes, Grock, his less restricted, more humorous AI chatbot.
I'm curious, what makes Grock different from other chatbots out there?
Well, Musk wants it to be more than just a source of factual information.
Okay, so more than just like a walking encyclopedia.
Right. He wants it to be able to generate creative content, maybe even controversial content.
Oh, interesting.
He wants it to be able to push the boundaries of what we typically expect from AI.
So it's like he's trying to inject some personality into artificial intelligence.
Yeah, he's trying to make AI more human in a way.
More relatable, more engaging.
Exactly. And I think there's something to be said for that.
I mean, if we're going to be interacting with these machines more and more, it would be nice if they weren't so, robotic.
Right, a little bit of humor can go a long way.
But couldn't that also be risky? Like, what if Grok starts generating content that's offensive or harmful?
That's definitely a valid concern, and it's something that Musk and his team are going to have to be very careful about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between being edgy and being irresponsible.
For sure. But Musk's argument is that we shouldn't try to stifle AI's creative potential.
So instead of trying to control it, we should just embrace it.
Embrace it and be transparent about it.
Transparency, that's key.
Yeah. Let people see how the sausage is made, so to speak, and then have open discussions about what's acceptable and what's not.
So it's like a crowdsourced approach to AI ethics.
In a way, yes.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And it all ties back into Musk's vision for X. His whole idea of creating this digital town square where anything goes.
Right, where people can freely express their opinions, no matter how controversial they might be.
He sees it as a counterbalance to what he perceives as increasing censorship and control within traditional media outlets.
So he's basically saying that the mainstream media can't be trusted.
He's not saying they can't be trusted, but he is saying that they have a certain bias, a certain agenda.
Okay, I see.
And he believes that X can provide a platform for alternative viewpoints, for dissenting voices.
But isn't that also a recipe for chaos? Like, if you let everyone say whatever they want without any filters, doesn't that just create a breeding ground for misinformation and hate speech?
That's the big question, isn't it? How do you balance free speech with the need to protect people from harm?
It's a tough one.
It is, and there's no easy answers.
So how is Musk planning to address that?
Well, his approach is to rely on community-based moderation.
So instead of having a team of people deciding what's allowed and what's not, you let the users themselves police the platform.
Exactly, through features like community notes, where users can flag content that they believe is false or misleading.
Okay, so it's kind of like a crowdsourced fact-checking system.
Yeah, that's the idea.
But can we really rely on the wisdom of the crowd to sort through all that information and figure out what's true and what's not?
That's a good question, and it's one of the biggest challenges facing social media platforms today.
I mean, we've seen how easily misinformation can spread online.
Right, it can go viral in a matter of hours.
So this whole idea of community-based moderation, it's a gamble, isn't it?
It is a big gamble.
Okay, so to recap, we've got a future with more robots than humans, an AI chatbot that can crack jokes, and a digital town square where anyone can say anything.
It's a lot to take in. Right.
It is. It feels like the world is changing faster than we can keep up with.
I know what you mean.
So where does that leave us, the everyday people, trying to make sense of it all?
That's a great question, and I think Musk's message is pretty clear. Be skeptical, be critical, and be engaged.
Don't just sit back and let things happen to you.
Exactly. Get involved. Do your own research, question assumptions, and participate in the discussions that are shaping our future.
It's about taking ownership of our own understanding of the world.
Absolutely, and recognizing that technology is a tool.
Right, like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil.
The choices we made today will determine how these technologies shape our lives tomorrow.
I'm starting to understand why this particular episode of Joe Rogan has generated so much buzz.
Me too. It really gets you thinking.
It's thought-provoking, it's controversial, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
That's Elon Musk for you, always pushing the boundaries.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore.
This conversation has been a real deep dive, and I, for one, need a moment to process everything we've talked about.
I hear you.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a few questions to ponder.
Sounds good.
What are your thoughts on the topics we've discussed today?
What resonated with you? What are you still grappling with?
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
It's something we create collectively through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to engage in these difficult but necessary conversations.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the mind of Elon Musk.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.